yeah, because they're crazy.
There you go. Hey everyone. Hey everyone. It's now time for The Doctor Is In. And we're missing Dr. Monique for the moment because she had a power outage in her house and is trying to call in, but she'll be on in a few minutes. But I have some wonderful, wonderful guests here today, and we're going to be talking about Blesstie Bosses, breast cancer survivors who have channeled their energy and their experience into businesses that help other breast cancer patients and survivors. So I have, you guys want to introduce yourself really quickly, and then we're going to go around. We're actually going to start our show with talking about kind of the current affairs of the day, and we had some good news recently, and then we'll get into our topic. So Mayma, we have Mayma Karma, who's going to talk about the currents of the day. Say hi, Mayma.
Hi everybody. I'm the president and founder of the Tiger Lily Foundation. Our mission is to educate, advocate for, empower, and support young women before, during, and after breast cancer, and to work to end disparities of age, stage, and color. Thanks for having me on, Ricky.
Hey, and Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen Lindsay, and I am the founder and CEO of Nord Natural Essence. And I created a product for breast cancer patients when they go into radiation. And my product is also good for an individual that has eczema and rosacea.
Great. And LaTanya?
Hello, everyone. I'm LaTanya Davis. I'm the founder and host of a soon-to-be launched podcast called The Breast Talk Ever. I'm a 3.5 year triple negative survivor, and I'm so happy to be here, Ricky. Thank you for having me.
Great. And there's Dr. Mo. Dr. Mo,
hey,
are you on? Yay. She's
can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I like that pose, Dr. Mo.
Everybody, yeah.
Coming to you live from my hallway in my house with no power. Awesome.
Oh, wow. Well, we got to get, we'll figure out a way to get it done, right?
You know what my shirt says? Professional Black girl. That's what we are. That's what we do, right?
Get it done. We get shit done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I was like, can I curse?
I can,
yeah. I get in trouble.
I know we'll probably get in trouble, but anyway, so we wanted to, we can't ignore what's going on in the world this week. The craziness that we're all dealing with, what we've been seeing on television. I actually have had my television off for 2 days. Since the Bible thing, I have not turned it on. I can't watch it. But we had some good news today. But I wanted to have Mayma come on and talk about kind of what we are all doing as a breast cancer community to support diversity and make it known to the world, how important it is to recognize diversity and disparities. So Mayma, do you want to talk about your pledge? It's so awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah. So thank you for having me on, Ricky and Monique. I really appreciate it. And I'm very honored to be on this platform and to be a part of this Black Blesstie Bosses conversation. So diversity and inclusion is very important to me across the board. When I began my organization, women who were younger were, getting more aggressive breast cancers and dying at a higher rate. So we tackled that first. And then we saw that young women were becoming metastatic because they were not being told about the importance of following up on, their treatments or their scans. And they just didn't know the importance of just, being their own best advocates. And so we began tackling metastatic breast cancer. As we delve into our work, we saw even deeper disparities with Black women. Women of color, Black women, have a 40% higher mortality rate from breast cancer. 40, almost twice our Caucasian counterparts. We also found that Black women, they have more. We have more aggressive breast cancers, like triple negative breast cancer, and again,
all of us had. Well, LaTanya, you and I all had triple negative.
Oh my God! Wow. I had TNBC too, and so until Immunomedics came up with Trodelvy, we didn't have any treatment for triple negative breast cancer. But either way, Black women tend to have so much disparities and barriers to care. And everyone's talking about how to end the barriers and how to end disparities, but nothing's working. Black women also have a very, very low rate of clinical trial engagement. And so if we're not getting into trials and we're not getting our bodies, studied or our DNA and included in the conversation, how are we going to ensure that we have treatments targeting Black women? And so we've been looking at this for the past, for quite some time. Some things happened that really propelled us forward. Two of my dear friends, Christine Hodgdon and Julia Maliz, were at a conference about a year and a half ago, and they were talking about breast cancer and diversity and inclusion. And a Black woman in the audience, another friend, Jersey Baker, said, well, it's really interesting having this conversation. There's no Black woman on the panel. How can you discuss diversity and inclusion when Black women are in the room but not at the table? And so they're like, okay, you know, you're right. Come on up and sit up here on the piano. And that began a really powerful movement. So Christine and Julia are very, very aware of their white privilege, and they speak about it quite often. And they felt that they needed to use that privilege for a purpose, to empower women of color and to ensure white women, you know, and men made sure that they were including us at every conversation, at every table. And so Tiger Lily held an event at San Antonio Breast in December. And, you know, I've looked around many years at the conference when I walked those halls and rarely seen a Black woman of color who's an advocate or in masks. Usually it's more people, you know, who are white women and men. And I thought, how do we, you know, people are saying that it can't find us. We're not in clinical trials and so forth. But this is the biggest breast cancer conference in the entire world. And I rarely see someone like me at the table. So we brought women of color from 20 cities that have the highest rate of breast cancer death in the country to the conference, and it was phenomenal. We made a pledge at the conference. We launched the Inclusion Pledge, which says that we will only be a part of activities, whether it's corporate panels or pharma or ads or anything that includes a woman of color. So this is for our white counterparts to engage in, not for us, just us. Those people like Julia and Christine have to educate other white people about the importance of the privilege they have and use that for good, use it for good. And you know, as Black women, we have to be vocal about our needs and speak about them. So we launched the pledge again on social media yesterday, and in 24 hours, we have almost 2,000 people who signed the pledge to ensure that Black women are at the table. Our quote is saying, being Black should not negate your right to live. And across the spectrum, you know, because of race, we're not included. We're overlooked. We are given the wrong information or no information at all, or not enough information. And so the pledge, really, we want you all watching to sign the pledge. Can we share the pledge link on Zoom, Ricky? Or
Yeah,
no?
we'll share it in the comments. Okay, we'll share it in the comments.
And Ricky, can you share the other stats around Black breast cancer and how many disparities we're facing around, you know, all that yeah.
Sure. You know, well, Black breast cancer is a disease. It's a different disease from any other kind of breast cancer. And so our mortality rate is 40 to really 60% higher, depending on where you live. Our recurrence rate is 39%. So once you've had breast cancer, we have a 39% chance of getting it again. For women, Black women under 35, they are getting breast cancer at twice the rate and dying at 3 times the rate. And so that's really what—
What's that number, 39%?
Yeah.
Of women who are younger than 45 are getting—
under 35, they're getting it at twice the rate and dying at 3 times the rate. So the work that you do with, you know, young women is so important, Maima, because so many young women go to the doctor with a lump and they say, oh, you're too young to get a mammogram. You're only 29. You know, come back in 6 months.
Well,
we had Jessica, you know, on one of our earlier shows, we had a young woman who died at 29.
Yeah, my friend Jasmine.
I found my lump at 31 years old. It took me over 6 months to get diagnosed because they told me I was too young to have breast cancer. I had no family history, and I had a young child. Maybe it was a milk duct or whatever, but I kept pushing for screening. And the thing too, even when I got the mammogram, it came back false negative. So it's more about just the screening. It's about knowing your body enough to trust yourself. Even when the screening says you're fine, if you know you're not fine, you feel, you know, in your gut you're not okay, keep pushing. And a lot of our women of color are scared. They don't trust doctors for valid reasons around, you know, clinical trial abuse or being misinformed or just not having access. So it's really important to be able to know your body and speak up for yourself.
Ma'am, I think you said something really important. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
I'm now outside in Puerto Patio. It's lovely this time of year here on the patio,
Looks gorgeous.
where the storm has hit, and my little peach tree in the background, Miss Peaches. But you hit something really important. And the thing I do want to say is this, different societies are recommending against self-breast examinations. And I think that is a huge flaw and a mistake. We need to encourage our women. One, we need to teach physicians how to do a clinical breast exam. Physicians need to know how to do a breast exam. Secondarily, patients and families and women and men, I have a hashtag check your chest. Everybody needs to know how to do a breast exam and to know what normal feels like for you, because normal feels different to every individual. And the reason they are they're not encouraging the self-breast exam is because they're saying it creates a sense of anxiety, a sense of hysteria. It creates false imaging, false biopsies, which lead to, false negatives and that sort of thing. But it is really super important, because I think we all know someone, and many someones, who have had negative imaging and have found a lump, and that lump has turned out to be breast cancer. And so it really speaks to the need to take that time monthly to get in tune with your body. The statistics are there, and sadly, they are not changing. Those numbers have not changed really within the last 5 years or so, despite advances in genomics, despite advances in therapies, despite advances in radiation practices, hypofractionation, and shorter courses. We do great things surgically, but those numbers are still not budging. And so, Mema, I applaud your pledge, because I think this is something not only that individuals should take, but corporations should take. I'm encouraging every company that I collaborate with, every company that says they care about breast cancer, every nonprofit that says they are for breast cancer, to look into this, to take this pledge, and to, like Rihanna said, pull up. Pull up not only yourself, but pull up a seat at the table, because at any conversation where we are discussing cancer, where we are discussing breast cancer, particularly for this conversation, we need to be present. You can't discuss us without us there.
Right.
Exactly. We have to hold people accountable. Put your money where your mouth is. People are using, I see all this money going out for trials and for advertisements and for education and awareness. But, if you don't see yourself on the media or on a brochure, or you're not involved in the making of it, people so I have patients who we're talking to about clinical trial engagement, and they're like, well, I don't trust the process. But if you're not inviting a patient to your pharmaceutical office to explain how a trial is developed and what happens, even before you engage people in the trial, the process in getting it, but how do you start in the beginning of even creating the trial? How do we reach our doctors and our pre-doctors in teaching schools before when you go into college? Are they promoting young men to get and women to become doctors? I want to see more Black doctors.
Severely broken. The pipeline is severely broken.
We need more Dr. Mo's out there. We need more children. So
Ricky and I were talking earlier about looking for Black doctors. I mean, you don't often see many at a hospital. So when you don't see someone who looks like you don't trust sometimes, right?
And
this is,
definitely don't see them at clinical trial facilities. You don't see
I
anybody.
was just going to say, this is why we have to change the way we think about clinical trials, because the old ways are not working. Mamie, I know you and I have had conversations about it. Ricky, you and I have had conversations about it. What we are doing is not working. And so we need to begin to reconceptualize something new for how we're going to conduct clinical trials, because one patient, one office, one trial, one enrollment at a time, one physician who doesn't look like you is just not cutting it. It's not going to do it anymore.
Right.
And for a population who's been abused and tested on and frankly lied to, and you have to build that trust. And even the words clinical trials need to be done away with. The word is scary.
I hate the word. It sounds like a petri dish. It sounds like
it
sounds like failure. The word trial sounds like it's failure, right? We got to change the word. So we totally.
So please sign the pledge, as Monique said and Ricky said. The pledge is really important. People have to be accountable for their actions, and accountable as an organization, being socially responsible to Black people, especially now we're seeing that how race affects everything. So visit our website, is www.tigerlilyfoundation.org, and just search for the Inclusion Pledge, or just Google and it'll pop up.
We'll put it in comments. Yeah.
So please sign it.
And actually in a couple, we're going to do another show with Mema to talk about the pledge some more. So
in more detail. Thanks for having me.
We have like 100,000 people to sign it, right?
Yes, 100,000 people. That's our goal.
Representation matters. It matters.
It does.
Yeah.
Thanks, ladies.
Love you. See you, babe.
Take care.
Bye. All right, Karen, you want to tell your story about?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes, I want to tell my story.
Okay.
When I was diagnosed with, well, let me start from the beginning. I had a schwannoma tumor, which disfigured my face, and I was getting over that, and I found a lump in my breast. I went to my gynecologist, and she sent me to a surgeon. Well, I had other things to do. I didn't go straight to the surgeon. I didn't call him. I didn't make an appointment. I waited 6 months.
You weren't
And
scared? You weren't
yeah,
scared?
I waited 6 months. And so that's the thing. Your body is talking to you. There's a foreign object in your body. So my story is to tell young women, don't wait. Pay attention. We're telling folks to, go get your breast examined. Yes, I had my breast examined, but I didn't take the next action that I was supposed to take. I waited. And so once I had my breast exam, I went to the surgeon, and I waited 6 months, and I went to the surgeon, and he, took out the tumor, and he said it didn't look cancerous. And when I went into his office 2 weeks later, he said, well, I've been trying to reach you. And I'm looking at him, and I said, well, my number's the same. And he told me I had breast cancer. And I found out what stage I was. I was HER2 positive. I was stage 3. So I got really sick. I got down to a size 2. I started doing acupuncture. That saved my life because I couldn't hold anything on my stomach. I started gaining weight and have not stopped. But anyway, so after that, I did radiation. And doing radiation, I burned severely bad. I had like 3rd-degree burns. And they had me using some things that doctors were recommending, which was Aquaphor and some other stuff that just wasn't working. So I was in Whole Foods one day, and I was going through a health journal, and I started mixing different oils and stuff together. And the more I mixed in to try to find out what works to help heal my skin, that's how I came up with my lotion. And so my skin started to heal, and the doctor was asking me, she said, what are you putting on your skin? I said, oh, just vitamin E, because I wasn't telling them what I was doing. And then, it's just like I started sharing it with other friends that were going through radiation. My mother got diagnosed like 5 years after I did. She didn't burn at all. She just had like a tan on her skin. I have other friends that didn't burn at all. So then that's when I realized that it was something too good to keep to myself. And I started sharing it. I started attending breast cancer conferences and, raffling off gift baskets. And, I also have a journal to help young women to help document their journey of women to document their journey through breast cancer.
Great. And that cream is like a miracle cream. I've given it to so many people, and I put it on my grandbaby's eczema. It's like the greatest stuff ever. But I think it was something that came out of your heart because you were trying to solve a problem for yourself, and then it became a business. And it's a great product, and it's helping a lot of women. So we can talk about, you should talk about how people can get it, Karen.
And I have a website. They can go to my website. Ricky will put the information. It's NuricNaturalEssence.com, and you can order it. Right now, I'm running several specials until probably about the end of the month, probably another couple of months. And, I'm really excited about it because I just love to see what is helping others. And they don't have to go and suffer the way I did because I was in so much pain. I told my doctor I wasn't coming back. And the week before my last treatment, they had a priest waiting for me in the lobby. And I just told him, I said, it didn't matter what he said. I still wasn't coming back.
I want to circle back to this because 2 things or a couple of things. And I want to get a sense from all of you. How many of your doctors tell you or told you what to expect? And let's talk, since we're talking radiation, did someone sit down with you and say, okay, so you're going to begin radiation. Here's what you should expect. 1, from your tissues, from your breast, but 2, from your overall body, like how you're going to feel, et cetera. Did anybody have those conversations with you that you can recall?
No.
No, all I recall is they say you may or you may not burn. Everybody's skin is different, but no one ever discussed the severity of the burning, and I mean, it's severe and it's really painful. It's not like when you burn yourself in the oven, it burns for maybe a good 30 minutes and you put some olive oil or something on it. No, This is a burn that you take to bed with you at night and you wake up in the morning with. That's how painful it was.
Well, you're exactly right. And this is the thing, radiation is cumulative over time. The effects of radiation, depending on the amount of radiation that you get, the effects really are cumulative. And patients can feel heat radiating from your breast. You will actually feel the warmth for several months after radiation. Those changes, that thickness of the skin, all of that lasts and persists. And it's important to let patients know, one, to expect that your skin will get thicker. You will experience some tanning, some bronzing of the skin. If you're Black, you're going to experience that your skin is going to get darker. You will feel heat. You may burn, you may peel, and talk to you about what you can do for those things, you know, sort of proactively, but also the amount of fatigue that patients feel after radiation, you know, and what you can do to combat that. Radiation is cellular damage. It deliberately damages cells to try to kill cancer cells so they don't reproduce. And we have to talk to our patients about the nutrition and foods that they can eat to combat that cellular damage so they can have more energy. So you can even detox from the effects of radiation. And I think that those are really important conversations that physicians need to be having with their patients. And it sounds like maybe we're not having those conversations.
No.
And they're not. And there was, I went to a conference and the doctor was up on stage talking, and a young lady asked a question, you know, why don't you tell us about the nutritional factor or what we need to be doing? And he said, to be honest with you, it's because we don't know. And we can't talk to something that we don't know about. You know, and I was fortunate when I was going through chemo, I had a doctor that sent me to a nutritionist. You know, he offered acupuncture to his patients after hours. You know, I didn't go to his acupuncture, but, you know, these are the things that he believed in and that he was helping his patients, but not all doctors do that.
Right. My doctor, my radiologist, I think he just told me that, don't worry, radiation is going to be better than chemo. And but gave me no warning about what would happen, what my skin would feel like. And for me too, it was summertime when I had my radiation. So I'm like a sun worshiper. I thought it would be a good thing to be out in the sun. That is not what you should be doing. But I didn't get any kind of information about what to really do about, you know, the radiation. Also, there's some side effects and there's implications for whether you can have surgery or not, or other things other treatments for your future that you need to consider when you actually do radiation. So
very true. And, you know, and I think in terms of acupuncture and nutrition, those things are becoming more and more available, but not in every community and not in every cancer program. And so for people who are watching, you know, if you happen to be a caregiver or an advocate or a survivor, or just have friends with breast cancer, when they go to their appointments, these are the sorts of things you should be asking about, because yes, you're going to see a surgeon. Yes, you'll see a medical oncologist. Yes, you'll see a radiation oncologist. But what does the survivorship program look like? And what support is there? Is there a nutritionist I can speak to? Is there someone who can refer me to services for acupuncture? Because those aren't things that we typically have either been referred to or exposed to. So the fact that you even did acupuncture says a lot, because many Black people are not aware of this. You're not sticking any needles in me. But there is a huge benefit to be gained from acupuncture, not just for radiation, but for sleep, for fatigue, for neuropathy, for so many different things. And so, you know, when you evaluate a cancer program, these are the types of questions that you want to begin to ask, because yes, you'll get the standard of care, but are you going to get the things that make your quality of life better? Because those are things you want to definitely consider and ask about.
Well, you know, it's so ironic because it was a young lady on my job. I guess she thought I was on my deathbed, and she said, I need you to go see my niece. She does acupuncture. And I'm just looking at her, I'm not doing acupuncture. And, you know, I went to her and I started having treatment 2 days before my chemo and 2 days after my chemo. And so it really depends. You know, you really have to get it just right. And I was able to eat the day after chemo. I'm eating pizza, where I hadn't been able to do in months, you know, because I'm just gutting everything out, you know, so it made a difference for me. It truly did. And everybody's different. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but that's what worked for me, because I was a size 2. I felt like, you know, now friends tell me, they said, we thought you were on your way out of here. I said, oh, well, thanks for telling me now.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I love when they say, oh, you look terrible. I'm like, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So great. Thank you, Karen. We'll come back to you as we all start talking. So LaTanya, in Miami, how's the weather in Miami today?
Oh my God, it was raining earlier, so it's pretty gloomy right now, but it's humid. You know, my hair was huge, now it's shrunk. So that my hair is a good indicator of what the weather's like.
That's for all of us, but I love your afro. I love it. I love your shape.
Has shrunk. Yes.
No, so tell us what's your story, Molly.
Oh my God. I'll give you the abbreviated version because we don't have a lot of time. But as I was listening to you and Karen and the doc, I'm like, oh my God, God help me get through this. So my sister and I lost our mother to metastatic breast cancer when we were both in graduate school. And Doc, my sister Yolanda was an educator. She also attended FAMU, so she was a Rattler as well.
Oh,
And we were in graduate school, and that was actually one of the most devastating things that ever happened to me. Losing my mother. She was a single mother, raised the two of us. Just amazing. Fast forward to 2000, I guess 12ish. My sister's husband died of a sudden heart attack. And my sister and my brother-in-law, of course, had a son together, my nephew Jaden. And at the time, they found him, he was asleep in his bed. Well, my sister woke up and she actually thought he had, just kind of fell asleep on the edge of the bed. And what in fact had happened is like an artery in his shoulder had caused a heart attack. So he died of a heart attack. And, my sister, they were such a tight knit, like, family, that was just like, oh my God. A few years after that, my sister is diagnosed with breast cancer. And, mind you, she went through the whole process of like, going to the doctor and getting the results. And she never told me until it was confirmed, which, when you hear all the stories, just that alone is just like, how did she do this? Like, she did that. A year and a month later, her cancer came back. And at the time I was in a corporate marketing role, and I was so blessed and grateful to have a really supportive, CEO at the time, and my bosses, everyone was just like really supportive. Because, I got a call one day and I was actually in a meeting. I was on a phone call with Sweden, who was like 6 hours ahead of us. And my sister got a call from my sister's principal, and she had actually backed into a car in the parking lot. And I remember saying to myself, like, God, please no, because, when my mother's cancer metastasized, one of the things that of course had happened, that it had spread to her brain. So long story short, my sister's cancer had metastasized, and unfortunately, to her brain. That was in like April of 2016. And, my sister was super, super strong. Anyone that knew her, knew that we were definitely products of my mother, very independent. We have that, like, we got this, we're going to win, cancer's not going to beat me mentality. And she, what had happened, I can't remember what happened, but she had an incident. We had to go for a checkup. She'd gotten so small that she was no longer like, she didn't weigh enough. She wasn't really strong enough to do like another round of chemo, because she had gone to the Moffitt Center in Tampa and she was on a trial. That trial was no longer working. And so I pulled her oncologist out, and I'd never done this. And I said, Doc, I need you to be really honest with me. Like, what are we looking at here? And she said, if I can just get her strong enough to do another round of chemo, we're probably looking at like 9 months to a year. That was in April of 2016. May 19th of 2016, my sister passed from metastatic breast cancer. And so I became the guardian of my nephew, who was, of course, 11 at the time. He had lost his father and now his mother. Wow. I'm from New Jersey, but I grew up in Orlando. So I moved him from Orlando to Miami Beach, South Beach. And before, we moved him here, and I typically have my mammograms like in October, around the over advertised, don't even get me started on that, commercialized.
We call it Breast Cancer Action Month.
Yeah, right. And so
we're reclaiming October, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's another episode, right? So I went, it was November, in fact, and it was like a week, actually the week before Thanksgiving. And I go, and because I've always had dense breast tissues, every time I would go and sit in that locker room, that pink locker room with the robe, it's always just this fear, anxiety that sort of takes over, because it's like, oh my God. And on this particular time, I wasn't really alarmed, because they were like, okay, we want to run some extra scans, because I have dense breast tissue. That's normally the routine. So they do that, the extra scans. And then, I'm in there just waiting, and I'm like, whoa. So they come back, and, Dr. Carrie Hortz of the Midtown Women's Center here in Miami says to me, we see something that looks like a cyst, where she wasn't really even alarmed. She said, we can, just observe it and just like see what it does, give it like a couple weeks. Or I have a slot for a biopsy that you can do it today. And I'm pretty sure you guys know what I said. I said today.
Okay.
So I remember saying, let me go grab lunch. And I couldn't even move. I sat in my car and I was like, you know what? I just went into heavy meditation mode, called my Father Almighty. And I just said, you know what, God, I just know there's no way. I got to be here to take care of my nephew. So long story short, because it was like the weekend, they did the biopsy, and the whole time I'm laying on the table, I remember like trying to assess the face of the technician, because it's like, okay, how's she looking? Because legally they're not supposed to tell you anything or whatever. Right. But I did the test and I had to wait over the weekend, and I'll never forget, because I was driving over the causeway and I get the call. And again, I'm trying to assess, like, okay, is she gonna have not necessarily a happy voice, but what's her tone going to be? And she tells me what I did not want to hear, that I was actually, the test had come back and was actually cancer. And everything was like a blur after that. So I just buried my sister barely 6 months prior. And here I was being given the diagnosis of breast cancer. So because of
triple negative at that.
Well, interestingly enough, I actually was not even initially diagnosed with triple negative. So once Dr. Hortz, we kind of talked about, like, I'm like, look, I want the best. And, I have the most amazing oncology team, because they realized what I had just gone through with my sister. And they said, you know what, we're going to treat you like you're our family member, like you're our sister, like, don't worry, you're going to be in the best care. So I made the assessments on like which route I was going to go. So my oncologist was the most amazing oncologist ever, Dr. Sarah Garrido at Baptist Hospital. And my breast surgeon, Dr. Salik Torres, is the surgeon who helped save my life. And so he did my surgery, and was so crazy. A year ago, in a couple weeks, he actually passed from cancer.
Wow.
Like 50, like in his early, like 57, I think. And, when he initially, he took out the lymph nodes and, did, how they run the test to assess whether or not the cancer had spread to the lymph nodes. And I initially was diagnosed with HER2 positive, but because they're so thorough, they were like, wait a minute, this is really odd, because both your mom and sister were triple negative. And Dr. Garrido was like, I really want to make sure, because this just seems really, really odd that both your sister and mother were triple negative. And thanks to her diligence and commitment to making sure that I was on the right path, she said, there's this test. It's the Blueprint test by the company Agendia. And I want to have this test done to double check and see what, the genomic subtype and all that stuff comes back and says. And thank God for her. Thank God for the Blueprint test, because were it not for her doing that, I probably would not be here, because when she got those results back, it actually confirmed that I was in fact triple negative. So I was, diagnosed with invasive, I always get it wrong, like my chemo brain is real, but stage 1A, triple negative breast cancer. And as a result of receiving that diagnosis, I, of course, went through chemo. I had a double mastectomy. I didn't have to go through radiation, but I did have reconstruction. And as a result of all of that, went through chemo, lost my taste buds and everything that comes with that, lost my hair. In the process of trying to figure out, like, what can I eat that I can taste that isn't nasty? What can I put on my hair to try to like make it grow back faster? Because I was determined, like, my hair is not going to come out. And in the process of doing that, I started discovering all of these survivors who had created amazing products. And I got hooked on podcasts like probably 2 or 3 years before my diagnosis, when Serial came out. And I've always been an NPR girl. So I love like super, super narrative, highly produced podcasts. And in the process of me discovering all of these survivors, I was like, wait a minute, like, I love how I built this. And at night, when I didn't want to burden my friends with the heaviness and the emotional aspects that are cancer, I'm a former athlete, I'm a track girl, and like, I have that mentality, I will not lose. I'm going to win. But the reality is, like you hear people say, like, check on your strong friend, because, we're not that strong.
Right.
But I don't like to burden people. So late at night, I would just lose myself in these podcasts, and like Guy Raz and his team are just like amazing. And I'm blessed that I actually was selected by NPR. I'm one of their inaugural How I Built This fellows. But as I started discovering survivors like my sister here, Karen, and Dana Donofree, and just like, oh my God, Tamara Rodriguez, I realized that, oh my God, I could almost do how I built this for breast cancer. Are there enough survivors that have done this? And it turned out the answer was yes. So, I come from a really strong corporate marketing background, have managed some of the most amazing like luxury spirits, and I'm a lifestyle girl. I love fashion, I love music, I'm a foodie. So I'm like, okay, God, when God made it crystal clear to me that he wanted me to put my sports stuff on hold, I said, okay, God, you want me to be your brand manager? Here I am. You didn't have to give me breast cancer. I mean, I don't mean that literally. He didn't give me breast cancer, but I'm like, I still would have done this. Right. But I said, okay. Once I got that confirmation from him, then, it started me on like, as I say, this leg of my relay race. And I created, I'm actually launching 3 podcasts, 2 of which are breast cancer related. But the first one, of course, is called The Breast Talk Ever.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. So when's your launch? When can we expect it?
So the trailer, oh my God, I literally looked back across the country for like the last year and a half. And if you know anything about podcasts, like highly produced podcasts, it is a lot of work. Like,
yeah,
like the NPRs and the Wonderies and the Spotifys, they have teams. I've been like a one-woman show, but I, of course, went to interview, took a podcast course, I did some stuff with Alex Bloomberg. And of course, I hired a podcast consultant that used to work for NPR and Gimlet. So I've been groomed by some of the best. And, my standards and everything that I did for the LVMHs and the Absolutes and the Hennessy's and all the brands that I've worked for is totally informing everything I do now. So I can't wait to share it with the world. I mean, when I tell you, it is amazing. When you hear me and Karen's episode, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. I can't wait till it comes out.
Oh my God. 2 controllers.
That's incredible. Talking about taking lemonades and making lemons and making limoncello. Boy.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love limoncello. Yes.
I know. Well, I mean, that's something about us breasties. It's a club. I always say it's a club you don't want to be in, but we turn into these badasses because we know what we want. We go after something and we try to, make lemonade out of lemons and try to live our best life every day. So I so applaud both of you guys on what you're doing, and thanks for sharing your stories. And I love you.
And Ricky, I think it's incredible. Ricky, I want to say this because, of course, when I came up with the concept, you hadn't done this yet. But thank you and Doc Doc, I'm sorry. I always call all my doctors Doc. It's like
it's
Doc.
all right. Everybody calls me Doc or Dr.
Right.
Mo.
Right.
I do a daily check-in on the radio here in Philly, and they call it daily check-in with Dr. Mo. You can call me anything. It's fine. I'm so encouraged and inspired by you. This is incredible.
Yeah. So thank you both for creating this, because this is an awesome platform. And I think one of the things that was important to me, obviously I'm a Black woman, and, in this environment that we're in, like, I'm proud to be Black. And I was joking before we went live that, I couldn't find my pick, but, my Black power pick, I wanted to stick it right here in the hair, like Questlove, but it was important to me to make sure that, when I can, I always like to make sure that I am representing for my people, because at the end of the day, the number one reason that I wanted to create the platform was, one, to also use my marketing skills to help each of the survivors that will be featured on my podcast. this is the first, Karen kind of knew, but it's actually supposed to be a surprise. I'm actually going to basically help them with whatever the area that they need. I'm going to be an extension of their marketing team, you know, and some of the survivors are like further along in their business than others. But I also, you know, my number one goal is to raise money and awareness for metastatic breast cancer, because unfortunately that is what took the lives of both of my mothers. And every day, as you know, we know the numbers, over 100 women a day die from metastatic breast cancer. And it's like, come on, like, we've got to stop this. We've got to find a cure, as well as extend the lives of those of us that are fighting this deadly disease every day.
Yeah, we really
Yeah,
do.
and like Dr. Michael was saying earlier, we also need to educate, you know, breast cancer or cancer patients when they're going through treatment about nutrition, because a lot of them, the doctors tell them, well, you can just eat anything, and you shouldn't. You know, you should go to a green-based, you know, plant-based diet, you know, limit the amount of meat you take in, drink plenty of water. You know, on my website, I have some different help guides and shampoos and other things that you can use when you're going through treatment, because everything about your life has changed. You cannot continue on the road that you were on. You know, if you know, there's a reason why some form object calls you to have, be it stress, be it the environment, but you need to change your habits, your way of doing things, you know. So,
it's true, you know. I tell my patients from the minute they're diagnosed that, you know, everything that we do damages cells. And it does so in order to get rid of something. Surgery damages cells. It cuts the body in order to remove a cancer. It's a necessary cell damage. But even the healing process creates inflammation. And we need to talk about how to combat that inflammation. Chemotherapy, deliberate cell damage, radiation, cell damage. And so I spend a lot of time talking to my patients about nutrition, things that they can do in order to get rid of cellular damage, increase their antioxidants, their berries, their plant-based diet, you know, things like that. And I have come to discover that it is not told to everyone, because many doctors don't receive the training, for one. Two, because I think that there is still a disconnect between holistic medicine, between natural foods and food as medicine, and Western medicine, because we can quantify Western medicine a little better. We can tell you how many milligrams, how many doses. No one can tell you how many strawberries to eat in order to decrease inflammation in your body. But what we do know is that you get more of it from the food that you eat than from any pill or vitamin supplement that you'll take. And so what you put into your mouth is super important in terms of how you're going to feel. And some of my patients have remarked that they've gone through chemotherapy and they said, my family's still waiting to send over cooked dinners. My church keeps saying, when can we cook for you? I was never nauseous. I wasn't sick. I didn't feel bad. I continued to work. And it isn't the same for everybody. And just like you said, Karen, you know, different things are going to work for different people. But having physicians who are knowledgeable about all the different modalities and how they work together, I think is really increasingly important. And it's something that we definitely need to talk about a little bit more, because patients need to know, you know, our breasties need to know what questions to ask and to where to seek out those answers. So if your doctor doesn't know, they should have someone to refer you to. I have a naturopathic doctor that I refer some of my patients to, and we partner together because we're not at odds. What I do and what she does are very complementary. She sends me patients who she's seen who have breast cancer and who are scared to get a biopsy and who, you know, don't want to go to the doctor. I get it. I come from a family of people who don't like doctors. It's all right, you know, but this is something that we have to deal with and address, and we can partner together. So I love, Latanya, I love what you are doing. And Karen, what you're doing is remarkable, and it is very much aligned with what we need, especially for people of color, of brown skin, especially. You know, did anybody even tell you that getting a breast reduction at the time of your surgery, one, was possible, but two, could reduce the amount of radiation-induced damage that might happen to your skin?
No, no one told me. You know,
right. And so,
and to be fair, I fought to keep my breast. You know, I had 4 different surgeries to get a clear margin, because I would refuse to give it up, you know. And I've been blessed so far, you know, but no one talked to me about that, you know. There wasn't an option, you know. But he told me, he said, if I don't get a clear margin this time, we're gonna have to take it. I said, okay, I'm fine with it. But, you know, I was younger. I wasn't well educated about, the only thing I knew about breast cancer is that one of my best friends that I grew up with, she had passed from breast cancer at a young age, and she had 2 kids, you know. So that's all I knew about, really knew. And once my mother was diagnosed, then my sister was diagnosed 2 years ago, and none of us have the gene, which is really crazy. Yeah. So
the gene that we may know about. I mean,
Right, right, exactly.
I think that's what we need to do more
Yeah,
research.
we don't have the BRCA gene. Let's put it like that.
Right, you have the BRCA, but you know, somewhere there's a gene out there that's affecting all of us. I think there's a triple negative gene. I think that's all the work that we have to do. And I, you know, my hashtag much work to do. That's why we need to participate in clinical trials and I think, you know, both of you guys, you know, early detection is so important. It's so important to know your bodies. And so, you know, when there's something abnormal and you can go and fight for yourself, because we have to fight for ourselves because we're not getting good information. I mean, you know, we need Dr. Mo's everywhere in the world because they're right. You know, and I think doctors are just busy people and we don't have enough Black doctors to know our bodies and our physiology and enough data about it. And we've really got to put some work there. So
you hit the head on the nail there, Ricky. It's not that doctors are not, you know, compassionate and caring. It's that there is a lack of information about what to do and how to treat Black women. And there is a distrust. There is a cultural disconnect that says that I don't connect with, you know, what's going on or the foods that you like to eat. I don't know that you maybe don't swim but might prefer biking, or that your exercise might consist of something different. It might be, you know, praise dancing at your church, or that you don't have access to certain things that I'm recommending for patients. And there's some cultural things there that, you know, also bleed into the treatment. And next week or the following, we're going to talk a little about cold cap therapy. You know, who's looking at cold cap therapy and ways to preserve our hair and our texture and our follicles? You know, like there's so much that's still a black box. And so representation matters, not only at the clinical level, but also at the patient level. We have to stand up and be counted, and we have to be available to get the data so that we can better understand what's going on with Black women and how to treat them, you know, and all the genetics companies that I'm aware of and that I partner with, I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, saying, what are we doing about Black women? When are we going to look at this? How can we look at this further? What can we design? And it's something that definitely has to change. Absolutely.
So true. And to your point, Ricky.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry about the test. Both my sister and I, we both tested negative for the BRCA gene. So like my oncologists and even my sister's oncologists were stumped, because it's like, wait a minute, like
your mom, you and your sister, yeah.
But, and it's, I don't know. And Doc, I think it's so true about the, like, for example, as you mentioned, the cold cap, because of course, you know, I consider myself a pretty stylish person, and my whole thing was like, I wanted to save my hair, but I don't remember anyone telling me like, hey, you know, this is an option, you know. I didn't find out about it until like after, and it's like, wait a minute, like had I known, you know, perhaps I would have, you know,
done something different,
tried to explore that, you know.
Yeah, and I'll tell you my radiation story. I forgot about this actually. You know, every morning when I get out of the shower, I put baby oil on my body. Like that, I've been doing it since I don't even know, since childhood probably. And I went there and I had baby oil everywhere, and they're like, "You can't."
Oh my God, no!
You can't do that.
I know. It's like
and it's cooking it. It is essentially cooking your brain.
Right, but yeah, you know, we're taught to moisturize our bodies. Like you can't go out with ashy legs, right? Right. So.
Just like with my product, I have like 8 essential oils in it, and I tell individuals that I give it to, do not use it prior to radiation treatment. You put it on afterwards, and you put it on twice or 3 times at night. And the most important thing is to try to start using it before you even start your treatment. And do not, you know, because your skin because it's already burning, and you shouldn't go out in the sun in it because of all the essential oils I have in it. But it'll help eliminate not have any burning at all if you start using it from the very beginning. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Ricky.
Yeah, and Karen, as you know, like, you know, it's still kind of hard. Like, I honestly totally haven't grieved my sister's death because I had to go straight into fight mode. But one of the things that, you know, when I think about my mother and especially my sister's journey was the burn from her radiation. Like, I can still see her breast and like just anything touching it. And we were, you know, doing the saran wrap to preparing her for the shot. And it was just like, and so when I discovered Karen, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know. I didn't know Karen at the time, but had there been a Breast Talk Ever podcast, like my sister, you know,
right.
So I'm so excited to offer these products and services that can be of great use to the survivors and even their caregivers as they unfortunately have to go through this journey with, you know, their loved one.
So thanks, you guys. So how do people find you? How can we buy the lotion, Karen? How do we find you, Karen?
They can find me on Neurak, Neurak, Natural naturalessence.com. And I had a new website put up, and we have a lot of plugins, and these plugins seem to be overworking, and it takes down the system every now and then, but it's coming up. But my domain owners, they're working on it to keep it up, because it'll come up and then it'll go down, you know, and I just like, okay, maybe I have to take some of the plugins out, because I had some of the pictures up for different radiation patients that had
story. Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know if you can see right here, this young lady, Tia, this is what she was first born, had the burning. And this is March the 10th. And this is what she looked like on March the 12th.
Oh,
And this is what she looked like on May the 25th.
A little closer.
There's a little bit of
on your website. Okay.
Yeah. Yep, we will definitely post it and put it on the site as well. Yep. Yeah.
And what about your social media, Karen?
It's Natural Essence _ Newark Natural Essence _ LLC. And that's my Instagram page.
Okay.
Okay. And then my Facebook page is Newark Natural Essence by Karen.
All right. And we'll post this in the comments. Okay. Okay. All right, LaTanya, when's this magic podcast going to come out? How should we find you?
Right. So the website is www.breasttalkever.com. Right now, it'll take you to a landing page, but once it launches, listeners based on their phone device, they'll be able to find it on Apple, Spotify, wherever they like to prefer to enjoy their podcast. But there'll also be some goodies on my website, because I've married a podcast meets fashion meets lifestyle. So it will be, I can't wait to share it. I don't want to tell too much, but my Instagram account will be Breast Talk Ever, Twitter, Breast Talk Ever. So when we go live, it's going to be a pretty big deal, and I'm excited. And
we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it when you go live. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Right.
And thank you for coming on.
I want to be in her closet. You want to be in her closet.
I know I do. I could use a little fashion advice myself. So we're going to talk. I'm going to be on this podcast, and we're going to have a chat about cancer.
I already have you penciled in one of my program boxes, so don't you worry.
I love it. Ricky, how can people find you on social media?
At Ricky Dove on Instagram and Twitter, RICKIDOVE, and Dr. Mo.
Well, you can find me, Dr. Monique Gary, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, got a new YouTube channel. And I want to continue this conversation, because usually we have a little bit of time to take questions from our viewers. I can't see them because I'm on my patio and it's getting ready to rain and I have no power. So I'm headed into the house to see about that. But I want to be able to get to questions and respond to folks, because I know that representation matters, and you don't always get access to a Black doctor to ask about these sorts of things. So come find me. Instagram, where the post is, where the doctor is in, put your questions in. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all these places. I want to hear from everybody, and we want to keep these conversations going. I want the links to your products so that we can support them and that we can keep this going, because it's so important for you to begin to turn these tests into testimonies. Begin to turn some of this pain into blessings for yourself and for others, and make this count, because we don't know why this happens, but we know that there are some transformative things that can come from having breast cancer at any stage, wherever you are in your journey, and whatever you are for your family members and, your caregivers and your loved ones. So we want to make it matter. It means something. So the doctor is in. We hope that this has been relatable, reliable, and real. There is the thunder. So I gotta go.
We'll try to answer the questions in our comments, and we will see you next week. Next week we're going to talk about bone health.
Bone health next week. This is an important conversation for Black women. We're not talking about Black women's bone health at all. I hear very little about it, so we got to get into it.
We're gonna get into it. All right, you guys. Thank you. I love you guys. Breasties.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.